is it?
Well, it is. It is. I think that nothing compared with Greece. I think that we are not in a credit crisis and definitely not in a contagion credit crisis.
But we are in contagion crisis in the sense that if there were to be a hard Brexit, if Europe decided not to agree to an extension, that would be effectively for some countries potentially crisis because of the economic ramifications.
But again, I completely disagree with the rhetoric that a hard Brexit would entail a massive crisis, because what we're hearing all the time is the message from politicians, and politicians will always say that it is impossible to reach a deal. And there are many ways of reaching a deal. Even at the WTO, you don't need to reach a deal in order to continue to have trade agreements between the countries. But again,
but if that's the case, then why vote for an extension if it wasn't such a pressing issue for all of the European countries? Rip off the Band-Aid and just trigger a hard Brexit. And I think it was a crisis for the likes of France, for instance, where it couldn't effectively afford to have another sort of impact on the economy, because that would write off Macron's fortunes possibly for the rest of his presidency.
No, but I understand from the perspective of the UK and the EU that it is better to have a framework, a deal by which to smooth out the process and go further. I completely understand that. But I am completely against the idea that it is going to be a nightmare if it doesn't happen. And the reason why it is not going to be a nightmare is because, unlike with Greece, what you have is all of the different mechanisms, that the monetary mechanism, the trade mechanisms, WTO, the Bank of England, the ECB, in every single sense, monetary, fiscal, and trade mechanisms are not the same as with such a weak economy as the Greek one was and probably continues to be now. So what I would say is, great to have a deal, great to have a good deal for both sides. Fantastic strategy from the EU to play hard and all that, because obviously they need to keep the club together. That's great. And also probably a good strategy from the UK to let the European elections pass and start talking with a different European Union, because maybe the results of the European elections will be a wake-up call for the view of the centralized planning type of EU that we've been accustomed to. Therefore, I think that we're hearing too much about the risks, but too little of the opportunities.
I was going to say that it is optimistic that there could
I
be
am
a
optimistic.
changing
I'm
group
optimistic in general.
Brussels.